Hey there, Earthlings, alternatives and trolls. Put down that mouse, lend an ear. Welcome to the Bandersnatch YouTube channel where we talk weird, wacky and wondrous. Sometimes strange and unusual. Maybe some normal stuff. We don't know. We roll with here. I'm the Bandersnatch and I usually have no idea what I'm doing. But today I do. Today is a review of episodes 1 and 2 of The Ring of Power, the new Lord of the Rings show as seen on Amazon Prime. Excuse me. The Rings of Power is set thousands of years before the known events of both The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. The series is to begin in relative peace and will go on and cover all the major events of the Second Age, such as the forging of the Rings of Power, hence the name, the rise and fall of the Dark Lord Sauron, the fall of Numenor, and the last alliance of the Elves and Men, as is chosen of what happens in the Second Age, which is where the series is set. The series will take place. The events do take place over thousands of years, but have been condensed for the series as a whole. So we're going to start with episode 1, which has been named The Shadow of the Past. Now, it starts in Valinor with a young Galadriel. We also hear the Galadriel's actress doing voiceover as well. Excuse me, got a cough. I apologise in advance. So we see a young Galadriel effectively making a boat with the intent to sail it down a stream. She's interrupted by other young children who eventually see her have the boat float down the stream. Of course, children being children, and the fact that they can be pretty cruel, they attack the boat with stones and make it sink. Galadriel, being a child herself at this point, does attack the ringleader and is effectively told off by her brother when he turns up. But he does it in such a way that he kind of teaches her that there's light and dark in everyone and everything. It's how we act instead of it's how we choose to act kind of thing. That's what he teaches effectively, and that you don't always know about true light until you have been seen or have touched darkness in some way. And then he takes her home for dinner, and I appreciate the fact that all the elves are dressed in white. They're dressed simply, and which is pretty good. And I also appreciate the fact that we follow Galadriel's brother over the hill, kind of into Valinor, where we see the two trees of valor, which are Laurelin, who's the gold tree, and Telperion, who are the silver tree, and that they effectively provide the whole light for Valinor. They are effectively the light of Valinor. And this is effectively a good setup for both the series as a whole and kind of had the start of who kind of Galadriel is, because Galadriel was born in Valinor. She goes to Middle Earth and she eventually goes back, when a good chunk of the elves were born in Middle Earth and go to Valinor. It's very kind of weird. Her backstory is strange and unusual. But in voiceover, and as we kind of learn through the imagery and voiceover from Galadriel's actress, that Valinor takes a very bad hit from the Dark Lord Morgoth with his rise, because he starts his reign of the destruction of the two trees of Valar. Of course, the elves in Valinor kind of follow him into Middle Earth, and he's eventually destroyed. But of course, for a small time after he's destroyed, he has his second in command, Sauron, who used to be an elf but was corrupted, kind of becomes, I think he was an elf, I could be wrong. He obviously becomes a Dark Lord, and he kind of falls after the ultimate battle of Morgoth's reign, and he goes into hiding, which is kind of where we start kind of in the piece behind the piece kind of after that. But we kind of have Galadriel, who's in command of a unit from the army. She has taken up her brother's call to find Sauron, effectively. A lot of the elves think he's gone and he's dead, but we kind of see moments in episode 1 where we know better, effectively. The attack by the orc, the kind of troll, in the beginning is pretty good. Kind of shows that the evil is still there. It's just not presenting as it should. It's not presenting what Galadriel feels is how they're presenting. She knows Sauron is there. She wants him gone, but he's not there in the way she needs him to be. She needs him to be, as it were. I definitely think that the death of her brother and kind of what happens later in the episode for her kind of adds to her scary persona later on. But we'll get to that bit. I really love the fact that the hobbits are kind of shown as kind of being sneaky and cheeky and light-footed and very wary of outsiders, because, you know, we have two humans kind of walking along and they sense somebody's nearby, and one of them goes, "Hey, it's a halfling, we better go." It's kind of weird. And then they pop, obviously then once they're gone, they pop up almost out of the ground, and it's pretty cool. You don't see all of what the hobbits become in The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. You kind of see the beginnings of it, which is pretty good. And our proper way in is with Nori. She's the main hobbit that we will be dealing with in the show, and her full name's Eleanor Brandyfoot, and I reckon that the Brandyfoots will eventually become the Brandybucks, who are the main. They along with the Tooks tend to be the more curious and outgoing, adventurous hobbits, which is cool and great and awesome. And this is where I kind of say all the costumes and props pretty good, because you see the difference almost immediately with the elves and the hobbits. Immediately you see complete difference in the costumes, the sets, the weapons, everything. It's all pretty awesome, and it definitely adds to what was done with Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit movies. Like the differences are enough where you can kind of blame the passage of time and how different they are, but they're tied together enough where you're like, it's the same place years apart, which I think is pretty good. I like the fact that when they're in, obviously going back to Galadriel, the first part of episode 1 is very Galadriel heavy. I like the fact that they go back to the capital, and Galadriel is like, I'm here to do this, this, and this. I need a meeting with the High King. We need to sort some stuff out. We need to sort shit. She's there to kind of get shit done, pretty much. And Elrond, who is there, and he's like, look, just chill out. There's a ceremony thing going on. We need to get through that, and maybe I'll get you situated with the king afterwards. We need to get that out of the way. And of course, the ceremony is something completely different, and Galadriel she gets kicked in the back of the shins, really. Excuse me, kicked in the back of the shins by finding out she and her small unit of elves are being sent back to Valinor because they're in peace. There's no point in looking for evil where there is not, even though evil is out there. and we will see that evil is still there in like random places. But yeah, she managed to kind of slide Elrond this look, which I personally call the "you can't" look, right? It's the one where you kind of you have anger and like you have anger, surprise, confusion, and just pure annoyance, kind of all wrapped up into one. You get surprised and you're annoyed about it, kind of thing. So yeah, she kind of, but this kind of adds to kind of this thing inside of her, this kind of dual kind of core she has inside of her at this point of, does she do as she's told and go back to Valinor, or does she stay and she fights and fight for what she believes is coming? And I think this is what first episode kind of is, kind of her kind of having to grapple with one side or the other. But yeah, I reckon that this turmoil adds later on to the scene in Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit, Fellowship of the Ring. She's at the fountain with Frodo, and Frodo offers her the ring, and she goes into in place of the Dark Lord, you'll have a queen, and she goes into the whole spiel, and she turns green, her voice kind of warps, all the rest of it, she kind of goes into the twisted form of herself. I reckon part of that kind of comes from this moment of her kind of struggling with that moment inside herself. And of course, later on in the episode, she's on the boat with her team. They're all kind of removed of their removed of their armour and their swords and all the rest of it. And yeah, all of the people on the boat, bar her, start singing the song that Valinor offers them, but because she has this turmoil inside of herself, she doesn't sing, and she's like, she can't quite choose. Do I follow the light or do I go back and try and help fix it? And yeah, and she kind of last minute kind of chooses, I need to go back and fix stuff because that's what I believe in. And I reckon for her to get to the point where Galadriel is in The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, she needs to go through the hell that will be this series. So yeah, so she kind of ends up kind of not going into Valinor. She ends up back in the sea, and she has to kind of swim back effectively. But I quite like that she kind of, that Galadriel kind of chooses, hey, I'm going to go back and fight for what I believe, which I think is pretty good. But I quite like the fact that Elrond, kind of hearing that, we kind of jump back to Elrond and the High King Gil-galad, and everyone's kind of picked up at least some of what Galadriel's been talking about. He's kind of voicing enough of what Galadriel has been spouting to kind of be like, hey, should we kind of at least keep some guards around just in case? You know, he's kind of trying to kind of poach the middle ground a bit, which I think is important. But of course, Gil-galad's like, no, I think we're all good for now. We need, we've got a few years. It's all good. but Gil-galad goes, all right, okay, but I got a job for you, and he kind of says, Celebrimbor, the elven smith, he needs some help. I've offered him your services. And I'm like, what am I going to do? This sounds pretty sweet. And we get introduced effectively to Celebrimbor in this one moment, along with kind of with Elrond, we get introduced to Celebrimbor, and that's kind of the last moment we see in at least this episode of those two. Is anyone else kind of bothered by the fact that some of the elves have short hair? Because I mean, obviously in like the books, all the elves have long hair. It's kind of like that in Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Obviously, I get with this series they're trying to make it a little bit different, and you can kind of blame continuity on the different time frames. But it bugs me that Elrond doesn't have long hair. Maybe that's just me. Anyway, yeah, so I quite like the fact that we have elves kind of out in the wild, as it were, amongst humans, and I quite like the fact that we have Arondir with we have some of the watchtowers that are in use, which is what. So yeah, we have one of the watchtowers is in use, and Arondir is one of the elves who works there, and he along with a few others go out into the. I'll start that again. Arondir, along with another elf, has gone out into one of the towns and one of the villages, and has effectively kind of asking out, hey, any weird stuff, any strange stuff we should know that you've picked up that we haven't. And everyone's like, nah, like maybe some weird stuff, maybe like a weird thing happening in the next village over. Nothing too bad. They've had weird issues. They've had issues with growing stuff, but that's about it. And so of course, Arondir's like, alright, cool. He has a word with Bronwyn, who is the village kind of healer, and they kind of walk off. Arondir and the other elf walk off. The elf warns him, hey, look, I know you don't come here just to find out stuff. You come here for her. There's a definite kind of, I think, a definite love-ish connection between Arondir and Bronwyn. And bonus knowledge, Bronwyn is in Welsh means white raven / crow, and an alternate translation is white beast, but that's usually for the Brangwen / Brongwen when naming. A little bit know-how, a little bit knowledge. Yeah, and we also find out later on that the tower, the watchtower at command of the king is to be abandoned by the elves, and this kind of adds to Arondir's kind of personal torment because he wants to stay around, he wants to keep an eye on the villagers and the girl he likes and all the rest of it. So he kind of goes back to Bronwyn and tells him, hey, look, we're being told to go. And she's like, well, that's annoying, frustrating, that's really bad. And yeah, we end up getting, of course, there we also meet Bronwyn's son Toby, and we also find out that one of the villagers' cows is sick. Excuse me. And they're producing a black liquid instead of milk, which is very bad. So Bronwyn and Arondir go off to search where the cow was. And of course, whilst they're away, Toby kind of goes off with one of his friends, and they both find this strange. They both have this strange weapon that is tied to Sauron and the orcs. And there's this and I have no doubt in my mind that this weapon will have some form of foreshadowing. It will have like bad consequences for at least that for Toby, his mum, and their village somewhere down the line. They're going to get pulled into something bad. So that's kind of that a little bit, and I also appreciate this, and so I like the fact that we kind of end really with Nori, and the hobbits really, because as they're approaching their kind of festival before they move on, they're kind of picking up weird, strange, unusual things happening, and then there's a comet, and there's a comet that comes down and it lands near where Nori is. Nori's out kind of foraging, looking at things again, and the comet kind of lands nearby her, and inside it is this very tall, big, lump stranger. And I reckon that this stranger will become Tom Bombadil. I mean, it could technically be like a form of Gandalf, but I don't think it is. Gandalf kind of comes later along down the road with Saruman, Radagast, and the two blue wizards. They come a lot later, which is they kind of come around. Yeah, I think they kind of come near the end after Sauron's defeat, they kind of come around then to kind of balance some stuff out. I mean, I could be wrong, obviously. That's episode 1. I quite like it because it kind of sets up everything, sets up kind of the basics of things, all the rest, which is pretty good. So on to episode 2, which is aptly called Adrift. So we kind of jump a little bit between Galadriel and Nori. So we kind of start off with Galadriel's in the water, she's swimming, and she's kind of lost a little bit. She kind of has to stop every now and then to kind of serve energy, all the rest of it. But she's still swimming in the water, and then we jump to Nori, who is surprised by Poppy, who's her friend, and they end up. So of course they're there with the stranger who's in the crater. They wake up. The stranger and Nori kind of connect in a weird way, as weird stuff happens around him, and Nori kind of manages to calm him down long enough for him to pass out again. And because of this weird connection they have, Nori's like, I have to help this dude. I can't leave him here. And she gets berated by Poppy because they go back to the village. They grab this wheelbarrow. They shove him in there and they push him to this safe place they know of. And they kind of cover him up, make sure he's warm and dry, and kind of just leave him to sleep. And I think that's such a Hobbit thing to do. You put them in a corner, you cover them up, you make sure they're warm, clean, and dry, and you just leave them to sleep. And you go back later. That's such a Hobbit thing to do, which I find quite funny. I like the fact that we then jump to kind of Arundel and Bronwyn, and then we find out the village, the place they were going to the village is burning. And they search it, and they find that there's a tunnel in one of the houses, and it's heading back towards the village where they started. And they're like, damn it, it's a bad idea. But one of us has to go down to the go through the tunnel, and the other one's got to go back and tell the village. And they so that's what they do. Arundel kind of goes down into the tunnel, and Bronwyn runs back to the village above land. And you can feel the tension, sexual tension between the two of them. And it kind of like, go on, now just tell her, hey, I at least like you. It's kind of like that weird, God, tell her you love her, boy. That's how I felt in that moment. And I'm like, he's gonna die. That's how I felt. Anyway. So, of course, Bronwyn gets back to the village. She tells them, hey, we need to go, there's some shit happening, like the next village over, we need to leave. And they're like, no, we're staying here, we're not an elf lover like you. Yeah, and they kind of and that's, of course, I'm not entirely sure if it's shown completely in like the Lord of the Rings as much, because it is a little elf heavy in those movies, but there is a history between elves and men of there is some distrust and definite tension and misunderstanding between the two races for weird obvious reasons. But the only reason why the villagers later listen to Bronwyn is because, of course, she runs home. She's like, if they're not going to listen to me, I'm going to get my son and bounce, effectively. But of course, she gets home, she finds it all a mess, hole in her floor. She's like, what the hell's going on? And of course, she finds the son, he's hiding. She tells her, run, there's something bad going on. So she kind of hides in a cupboard as an orc kind of comes into her house. So of course, between her and her son, the orc is killed, is fought and killed and beheaded. And in a badass power move, one of the best badass power moves I've ever seen in the past 6 months. She turns off back up at the main kind of bar where everyone is, with the orc's head, slams down the table and says, right, you lot, this is what has just happened in my house. if none of you lot want to leave, if none of you want to leave, that's cool. Rest of us, we can go to the watchtower. At that moment, that's a safe place. So it's just this badass moment of just something bad has happened. Someone tries to get everyone moving. It takes an orc's head to get everyone moving, and it's just little badass power moves. Like, that's how I feel. Little badass power move to get people going. And I also quite like the fact that Toby, he still has the sword, and he's been hurt, and he's still got a bit like orc blood in him as well. And it's kind of cool that the weapon he has, the half weapon he has, reacts to the blood and kind of lights up and kind of becomes more than what it is. And of course it adds to like that the previous episode's foreshadowing and like chaos and all the rest of it. And yeah, so of course Toby and Bronwyn, they join the other people who are going to leave. So, and of course with that we kind of jump back to Arondir, who is obviously alone, is in the tunnel, knows something's wrong, and finds evidence of at least one orc running around, whether it's the orc that Bronwyn had killed, whether it's another one, or there's like other orcs running around in these tunnels. But yeah, so he ends up getting chased through the tunnels, and there's no doubt there's orcs down there. And of course he ends up in water, swims through it, gets out of the water, kind of finds himself in this weird kind of corner, as it were, and then gets pulled into the shadows. And that bit, I'm like, that's pretty cool. And I reckon, bit of Tolkien history for you, that at some point, several elves were captured by Sauron's forces, and several of them ended up being tortured into orcs. And I reckon that Arondir will be one of these elves who is tortured, like incessantly tortured, and he eventually turns into an orc. But I reckon he holds out until he and the orcs who have him cross paths with Bronwyn and Toby. Something happens where they cross paths again, and either she dies at an orc's hand, and that's what kind of sends him over, or he dies trying to protect her. That's a fan theory I've got from that a little bit. I could be wrong. It could be something completely different, but that's what I've got in my head so far on that bit. So yeah, from that moment we jump to Celebrimbor, and Eregion. I'm still not sure how that's pronounced. I've read it for years as Aragon, but I could be wrong. Anyway, we're kind of introduced to Celebrimbor through Elrond in the previous episode. Once again, we're kind of introduced to the situation kind of through Elrond. The situation, of course, is being explained to him from Celebrimbor, who I feel is kind of presented as he's a whimsically minded man. He's practical, but he's whimsical at the same time. He's got both. So he's kind of got both in him, and he's told, and of course we find out that he wants to build this massive forge. He wants to kind of create more things besides jewelry. He wants to do something more. He wants to create things. And of course everyone goes, why did you go to the king with this? And he goes, yeah, I did go to the king, but he gave me you, so what are we going to do about it? So of course there's kind of finding this out kind of has Elrond kind of sit adrift a bit, and he kind of realizes, hey, this is a test for me, and I've got to overcome this thing to kind of, maybe I can get something out of it if I help, kind of thing. And he comes up with an idea. So he takes Celebrimbor to Khazad-dûm, and this is Khazad-dûm before the dwarves got greedy. So it's like a very beautiful place. And obviously the door is not the door that we see in Lord of the Rings. That comes later because Celebrimbor and the dwarves kind of become bros. But obviously as this happens later, excuse me, so we get so of course everyone goes in, says hello, tries to get entrance, and is denied. It's effectively denied. Because, there is there is that level of distrust between the dwarves and the elves. As there is, but he manages to get, remembering this weird kind of thing he was taught by his friend from Prince Durin. He pulls this move and gets taken inside, tells Celebrimbor, I'll see you later, it's all going to be good. So he gets taken into Khazad-dûm, and of course with Elrond we're kind of alone in the strange place, so we drift again. And we go for Khazad-dûm, and Khazad-dûm is not like it is in the movies. Of course, it's separated by thousands of years, and before the dwarves got really greedy, that's where it is at this point. So we see a very beautiful place, and of course, it's nice decorated. There's the dwarves, and I have to admit, when I saw the dwarves, both my heart and my brain went, yay! I am a dwarf person, right? I love dwarves. The dwarves in the movie, I think they're like my soul race, like the dwarves. It's weird. It's a weird thing, but I think the hobbits like the upper half of that. That's what I like. The hobbits and dwarves are more my people, but that's just me. So of course he gets set up against Durin, his friend. They have to destroy a whole load of stones. And he gets to this one point, and of course, everyone kind of messes up a bit, breaks his thing. It's had something different. He sees the sort of he sees the actor sees the look on Durin's face to say, yeah, I ain't winning this. So he chooses to lose. I think he kind of chooses to lose effectively, and asks that Durin personally escort him out. And this kind of gives him a chance to kind of get to Durin's head a bit, which is good, I think. We kind of learn that they have not talked to each other it's been 20 years since they last spoke. And of course we learn that Durin's kind of lived a lifetime away from Elrond, and he's gotten married, he's got kids, there's like 20 different things, there's like loads of things he's done. He's kind of lived a life away from Elrond. Elrond kind of finding this out, kind of goes like, I'm sorry, but congratulations, and he's like, congratulations on like getting married and having kids, that's brilliant. And like kind of Durin kind of sensing that Elrond is like, hey, I'm actually genuinely like, look, this is good for you, I get it. If you don't want to speak, it's fine. So Durin goes, I'm going to introduce you to my wife, but that's it. No dinner, nothing like that. That's it. So he takes him to introduce him to his wife. They get introduced, and she's like, hey, you must stay for dinner, and this and that. And effectively what Durin doesn't want, his wife goes, let's do it, and that's what happens. And during dinner scene, we learn a lot about Durin and kind of how he is as a person, and kind of get the whole it's kind of very similar to how the dwarves are in The Hobbit and how Gimli is in Lord of the Rings. You get them as the person instead of kind of how everyone kind of generally perceives them as a whole, which is pretty good. And we get there's a tree in the background, and everyone's like, hey, you grew the tree. And Durin's wife is like, yeah, he drew it. Everyone mocked him for it, but he's put effort into it, like it's our third child. And everyone's like, haha, I've got you, my friend, I have you. And of course, due to this dinner, Elrond is able to pass on his request to Durin, and he's like, hey, look, it's just a request, you guys don't have to do it, but if you pass it on to your king, that's cool. Obviously, it's your guys' choice. I'm just extending the offer, and I'm gonna go. So that's what happens. He goes, and he gives the offer and goes on his merry way. And of course, Durin takes it to his dad, who's also called Durin. And we get, but of course, the king is wary, and it's like, initially says no. And this is because they have an item in this small chest, and it could be the Arkenstone. We don't necessarily see it because I think the Arkenstone came from the Lonely Mountain itself. I mean, it could be the Khazad-dûm version of the Arkenstone. You know what I mean? But it's something that they have, and they're worried about it. Worried about what others would find out about it. So yeah, of course, there's that moment. We then jump back to Nori. She's splitting her time between looking after the stranger and being with her fellow people. And of course, in one of these moments where she is helping, she is obviously helping the stranger. Her dad gets her. They're setting up for their festival. He kind of loses his footing. I think he effectively breaks his ankle. With the hammer bruises, he effectively breaks his ankle. And everyone's like, would he be able to migrate after the festival? And everyone's like, yeah. And of course, one of the other women's like fussing about, kind of whinging, and the puppet goes, "Hey, ma, shut up! Like, leave it be for like 20 minutes, would you?" And of course, they go off to kind of help Nori's mum to look after Nori's dad. And we have this moment that kind of Nori kind of feels set adrift a bit, because she doesn't know how to separate her feelings, and she's not sure what she should do. Should she hang back and help her family, or does she still continue helping the stranger because she promised to? Obviously, kind of what adds to kind of this strange feeling and the sense of like something being amiss is the stranger, the light Poppy has breaks, and all the kind of fireflies which are in it kind of fly out and kind of fly around them, and the stranger kind of creates this constellation, and with the fireflies, and like Nora's like, I recognise it, but I don't know how to help. How do I help? What do we do? And kind of and as the fireflies die around them, kind of adds to the kind of feeling of a miss, and how Poppy and Nori both feel like the stranger does that something's wrong. We can't quite fix it, and the kind of how they are. They're kind of how they are adrift, like everyone else is. Everyone has these moments of feeling cast out adrift and something they don't know or understand. I like how we kind of, as we start, as episode 1 kind of starts with Galadriel, we kind of end with Galadriel in this episode, in the sense of she's kind of spent most of her time at sea, in the sea, swimming. And of course, she has during the show, she gets pulled out of the water by this small group on this little kind of mishmash of a little drifting thing, because their boat's been attacked by this big old sea worm, and they're trying to get back to land. The group kind of reacts badly to each other. One of the guys touches Galadriel's kind of trying to sort herself out and kind of get herself to the point where she can talk. They kind of show off her ears. The group kind of reacts badly. She reacts badly to the guy who touched her. It's kind of had this bad moment, just kind of sniping at each other. And of course, the sea worm comes back, and of course, the thing they're fighting on kind of gets broken up into pieces. So of course the sea worm goes after most of the group. Galadriel kind of ends up back in the sea again. She's swimming. She ends up crossing paths with one of the guys on the boat again. He pulls her out. His name is Halbrand, and they kind of snipe and sneer at each other. They kind of tell each other their names. They're trying. They're just kind of trying to get a thing of, hey, and like, do we hound you out of home? So you kind of find out more information that bad guys have put Hal Brand out of work, and it's like, and sent them off out to sea, and they're now stranded. And I kind of appreciate the fact that Galadriel is stuck on this boat. She has this. She kind of is adrift, effectively, with someone who doesn't like her, and is kind of seems like he's against everything she's saying, and all the rest. It's kind of like a yin yang kind of thing going on. But they have to work with each other to get through this very violent storm that comes upon them, and they have to remain on this little dinghy, keep it floating, keep it going, and that's what they do, and they eventually get through. And I love the fact that they eventually kind of work together, and of course as each one of them kind of falls off the boat, they pull each other back on the boat and keep them all together. I like the fact that kind of they get to the point where they work together and they get through the storm, and they're there, and of course I think they finally fall asleep, and then they wake up, and the last scene's Galadriel kind of looking up. They've been caught by this boat, and we don't know who the dude in charge is. So we don't see his face because the sun's kind of right in her eyes. So she can't see who it is. Now it could be like the bad people on Corsair ships, or it could be Isildur, who is or Elendil, who is his father. The pair of them are descendants of Elros, who is Elrond's brother, the Númenóreans. There's an island called Númenor that's nearby, and the Númenóreans are considered good mariners. They're very good boat people. So I reckon that it's either one of those two guys, and we get pulled into Númenor in the third episode. That's what I reckon happens. So yeah, that's kind of that episode. No, yeah, that's all they've got. That's all it is. And I reckon, of course, with episode 1, I say it's a very good episode. It's a good intro. It sets a lot of stuff. It says a lot of back history up. It sets everything up for future episodes. I give that a 7 out of 10. I mean, maybe an 8 out of 7/8 out of 10. 7.5. Give it a 7.5 out of 10. Purely because I think there could be more history details sort of thing. We could have added a bit more history, a little bit more. But that's just my personal opinion. Episode 2, I'm going to give that, again, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. There's a bit more kind of going on than the first episode, as obvious. But yeah, I reckon there could have been a little bit more stuff done, either kind of in the background or kind of a bit more history going on kind of around them. Yeah, that's my opinion. There's a 7.5 episode 1 and an 8, both out of 10. So that is my review for both episodes for today. So I'll leave that there. Please leave a comment, share this video with others if you want. All the rest of it, you don't have to. Please be aware this is my first proper video in a while. It's my first video review. It's mainly me rambling, so I apologise. But yeah, that's what it is. So yeah, I hope you all guys have a good day. I have a blog. Excuse me. I have a blog. It's the bannersearchblog.blogspot.com. The link will be down below. That's where I do a lot of stuff. I'm mainly a writer, so that's where a lot of things are. I don't have Patreon, but I have Ko-fi. If you feel like donating, you go there. The link's also down below. I'm going to say, please keep it sensible in the comments down below. any abuse found, you will be reported to YouTube, you will be blocked, and all the rest of it. I don't condone abuse, verbal, written, or otherwise. Please, have it constructive, right? If you've got something that bothers you, be constructive about it. Don't be bullies. Not good. So yeah, that's what I have for now. I wish you adieu. This is Bandersnatch YouTube channel. I am the Bandersnatch, and remember, stay weird, stay wacky, stay wondrous, and I'll see you soon.